Hello, this is Papa B reading, and I'm going to be reading today Chapter 13, An Unexpected Meeting, from the book The Magician's Nephew, which is part of the HarperCollins The Complete Chronicles of Narnia, written by C.S. Lewis. And I begin. "Wake up, Tiggery! Wake up, Pledge!" came the voice of Polly. "It has turned into a toffee tree, and it's the loveliest morning." The low, early sunshine was streaming through the wood, and the grass was gray with dew, and the cobwebs were like silver. Just beside them was a little, very dark wooded tree, about the size of an apple tree. The leaves were whitish and rather papery, like the herb called honesty, and it was loaded with little brown fruits that looked rather like dates. "Hurrah!" said Diggory, "but I'm going to have a dip first." He rushed through a flowering thicket or two down to the river's edge. Have you ever bathed in a mountain river that is running in shallow cataracts over red and blue and yellow stones with the sun on it? It is as good as the sea, in some ways almost better. Of course, he had to dress again without drying, but it was well worth it. When he came back, Polly went down and had her bath. At least, she said it was what she had been doing. But we know she was not much of a swimmer, and perhaps it is best not to ask too many questions. Fledge visited the river too, but he only stood in midstream, stooping down for a long drink of water and then shaking his mane and neighing several times. Polly and Diggory got to work on the toffee tree. The fruit was delicious, not exactly like toffee, softer for one thing and juicy, but like fruit which reminded one of toffee. Fledge also made an excellent breakfast. He tried one of the toffee fruits and liked it, but said he felt more like grass at the hour in the morning. Then, with some difficulty, the children got on his back, and the second journey began. It was even better than yesterday, partly because everyone was feeling so fresh, and partly because the newly risen sun was at their backs, and of course everything looked nicer when the light is behind you. It was a wonderful ride. The big snowy mountains rose above them in every direction. The valleys far beneath them were so green, and all the streams which tumbled down from the glaciers into the main river were so blue that it was like flying over gigantic pieces of jewelry. They would have liked this part of the adventure to go on longer than it did, but quite soon they were all sniffing the air and saying, "What is it? Do you smell something? And where's it coming from?" For a heavenly smell, warm and golden, as if from all the most delicious fruits and flowers of the world, was coming up to them from somewhere ahead. "It's coming from that valley with the lake in it," said Fledge. "So it is," said Diggory, "and look, there is a green hill at the end of the lake, and look how blue the water is." "It must be the place," said all three of them. Fledge came lower and lower in wide circles. The icy peaks rose up higher and higher above. The air became warmer and sweeter every moment, so sweet that it was almost brought the tears to your eyes. Fledge was now gliding with his great wings spread over motionless on each side and his hoofs pawing for the ground. The steep green hill was rushing toward them. A moment later, he alighted on its slope a little awkwardly. The children rolled off, fell without hurting themselves on the warm, fine grass, and stood up, panting a little. They were about 3/4 of the way up the hill and set out at once to climb to the top. I don't think Fledge could have managed this without his wings to balance him and to give him the help of a flutter now and then. All round the very top of the hill ran a high wall of green turf. Inside the wall, trees were growing. Their branches hung over the wall. Their leaves showed not only green but also blue and silver when the wind stirred them. When the travelers reached the top, they walked nearly all the way around it outside the green wall before they found the gates. high gates of gold, fast shut, facing due east. Up till now, I think Fledge and Diggory had had the idea that they would go in with Diggory, but they thought so no longer. You never saw a place which was so obviously private. You could see at a glance that it belonged to someone else. Only a fool would dream of going in unless he had been sent there on very special business. Diggory himself understood at once that the others wouldn't and couldn't come in with him. He went forward to the gates alone. When he had come close up to them, he saw words written on the gold with silver letters, something like this: "Come in by the golden gates, or not at all. Take my fruit for others, or forbear, for those who steal or those who climb my wall shall find their heart's desire and find despair." "Take of my fruit for others," said Diggory to himself. "Well, that's what I'm going to do. It means I mustn't eat any myself, I suppose. I don't know what all that jaw in the last line is about. Come in by the golden gates or gold gates. Well, who'd want to climb a wall if you could get in by a gate? But how did the gates open?" He laid his hand on them, and instantly they sprang apart, opening inward, turning on their hinges without the least noise. Now that he could see into the place, it looked more private than ever. He went in very solemnly, looking about him. Everything was very quiet inside. Even the fountain, which rose near the middle of the garden, made only the faintest noise. The lovely smell was all round him. It was a happy place, but very serious. He knew which was the right tree at once, partly because it stood in the very center, and partly because the great silver apples with which it was loaded shone so and cast a light of their own down on the shadowy places where the sunlight did not reach. He walked straight across it, picked an apple, and put it in the breast pocket of his Norfolk jacket. But he couldn't help looking at it and smelling it before he put it away. It would have been better if he had not. A terrible thirst and hunger came over him, and a longing to taste that fruit. He put it hastily into his pocket, but there were plenty of others. Could it be wrong to taste one? After all, he thought, the notice on the gate might not have been exactly in order. It might have only been a piece of advice. And who cares about advice? Or even if it were in order, would he be disobeying by eating an apple? He had already obeyed the part about taking one for others. While he was thinking of all this, he happened to look up through the branches toward the top of the tree. There on a branch above his head, a wonderful bird was roosting. I say roosting because it seemed almost asleep. Perhaps not quite. The tiniest slit of one eye was open. It was larger than an eagle, its breast saffron, its head crested with scarlet, and its tail purple. And this completes the first part of chapter 13. And please come back and let me read you again.